Welcome into Survivor Analytics. I am your host, Clyde. I'm the true expert. With me, as always, we have the voice of the people in Jack. Jack, how's it going?
What up, party people? Let's get muddy.
Let's get muddy. Let's jump right into it. Today, we are covering episode 14 of Survivor Cook Islands, the penultimate episode of the season. At the start, I wanted to talk about the strategic side of this episode because I think this one shows the strategic development in the history of Survivor. So going into this week, we had a pretty standard format. We had a core alliance of 4 I2 players with 2 Raros on the outside. But this is not the first time that we've seen this scenario play out. We actually saw this on Survivor 45 as well, where at the final 6, you had the Reba 4 going into this round with 2 Bello people on the outside in Jake and Katurah. Jack, do you remember who were the 4 members of the Reba 4 from Survivor 45? Can you name them?
The 4 against Jake and Katurah. Well, it's obviously Dee and Austin.
Yeah.
The white lady who said Katurah should be a lawyer.
Julie.
Julie.
And there's one more, one Jeopardy champion remaining.
Oh, Drew Basile.
And Drew Basile.
Of course.
So those were the 6 people going into the final 6 in Survivor 45. And by the numbers, these 2 situations are similar, but when you really take a look, there's some major differences here. First, you can look at how the contestants on the bottom are perceived. In 45, Jake and Katurah are seen as 2 easy beats in the final tribal. I think any one of the Reba 4 would have defeated them in the end. Meanwhile, in Cook Islands, Parvati and Adam are probably the biggest jury threats in the game due to all the Raro connections on the jury. The obvious difference here is the actual decision by the majority alliance. In 45, that group of 6 decides to flip on each other. You get Drew going out there in a 4-2 vote. And here on Cook Islands, we see Parvati going out. And the I2-4 stick together to knock out the person on the bottom. So even though I feel like this vote was a little bit predictable, it was just a matter of who's going home this week. Is it Adam? Is it Parvati? I think it's nice to kind of contextualize this season in the history of the show. So there's my opening spiel for you, Jack. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I mean, it's an interesting development, right? Obviously, Jake and Katurah presented themselves in very different ways than Parvati and Adam do. Jake kept trying to make something happen and just couldn't. I'll say this, you might remember it. I don't remember the jury makeup, right? Did they have a pre-merge tribal advantage on the jury?
Yeah, the jury of 45 was pretty evenly split between Bello and Reba players. You might remember all of the Lulu contestants, like Brandon, like Hannah Rose, like Sabaya, and Sean.
Oh, the Trainwreck tribe. Yeah.
Yeah, the Trainwreck tribe. All of them went home in the pre-merge. So as long as you weren't on Lulu, you had a fair chance with the jury on 45.
A couple of things. I think in modern Survivor, the sense I have is that while pre-existing relationships help on the jury, and sometimes it can be a really good thing, it's less of a concern than it was back in Cook Islands, right? People on the jury now are far more concerned with gameplay, or at least on average. There's a lot less emotion that goes into it a lot of the time, with some clear exceptions, obviously. Thinking of Maria on 46. Yeah, I think that's an interesting parallel there. So good note.
You want to hop right in then?
Yeah, let's do it. We go back to camp, and Jonathan's hat is standing in effigy, right? There's a little Jonathan shrine, and the tone for the episode is set up front before Tree Mail. Adam and Parvati are trying to figure out how to crack the I2-4 and find some little divide to wiggle into and erode and split off.
One thing I will throw out from the beginning of the episode is this quote from Parvati where she says, "I have to put it in a way that it doesn't seem like they're betraying their old tribe." And I thought that was very keen insight from Parvati. The past month or so, she has not been presented as a very strategic player. She's kind of lumped into the Raro majority, and she's just the flirtatious one within that group. But if you really put a lens to her game, you can see some legitimate game ability. Like Parvati knows that she needs to find a crack, but there's more steps involved there than initially meets the eye. She later lands on Ozzy as the person to flip over to their group. Ozzy's the type of person where he's not just going to flip for strategic purposes. You need to maintain his self-image, and Ozzy sees himself as a person with integrity. So you need to kind of give him legitimate reasons on a personal level to work with herself and Adam. So
yeah,
we don't see a lot of Parvati this season. She was your winner pick. I'll be interested to hear who your new winner pick is going into the finale. But she has her moments that shine right there.
I'll say this. I was feeling good about her as a winner pick pretty far into this episode.
Really?
I was convinced that she was going to flip Ozzy for a long time, to be honest with you. I think the combination of the weight that her name carries in the Survivor community and any little bit of success I saw with her gave me more confidence that she was going to win. Shall we go to the reward?
Yeah, let's get muddy. Let's get dirty, Jack.
Let's get oink, oink. Let's get in the mud. Come on, piggies. So we get to the reward challenge, and there's a massive mud pit. And Jeff says, hey, everybody, get sloppy. You're going to go jump in the mud, get as much mud on yourself as possible, go through a little obstacle course, and then pull mud off of yourself into a bucket. Heaviest bucket after 10 minutes wins. The reward itself, a spa day or a spa trip overnight. You get to send somebody to exile. The winner gets to send somebody to exile. 3 people will get to go on this reward. Not selected by the winner, though. The top 3 players in the challenge get to go on the reward. How did you feel about that facet, not getting to choose?
I think it added an interesting element to the challenge. From a pure fairness perspective, it's probably better to just have whoever comes in first gets to pick the 2 people that ride with them. But I feel like the episode at large benefited from having the top 3 players go on reward. Because otherwise, Parvati wouldn't have been there. And we don't get that iconic moment in the spa later on.
If it had been winner gets to choose who goes along, right? Which is kind of the standard, especially in Modern Survivor. Although last week, worth noting, the winner did not get to choose. It was the winner's family.
It was Mike Shallow. Was that his name?
I can't believe you remember that. I mean, Ozzy, spoiler alert, will win this challenge. If Ozzy had to take 2 people, he's in an alliance of 4. Who do you choose? Who do you leave? Who do you take, right? I kind of wish in this situation we had seen that. But anyway.
Yeah, get a real sense of where Ozzy's true allegiances lie within the I-2s.
There's a whole bunch of permutations that could have been really interesting. Anyway, the challenge is get as much mud through as you can. You cannot hold any mud in your hands. A few interesting strategies here. Yule piles mud on his back and then walks through the challenge, through the maze. Becky and Ozzy soak their hair in mud. Parvati uses her chest. I'll put it that way. It's disgusting. The camera is loving it, right? Because these people get over their buckets and they're like, huh, they're scraping themselves. You know, we're seeing a baggy swimsuit getting scraped of green mud. It looked disgusting. It's genuinely nasty, but it's a pretty fun challenge. Did you like this challenge?
It's a fun challenge that just ran too long. We literally get an entire 20-second countdown from Jeff with close-up shots of the players' different limbs as they're rubbing the mud off of themselves. Jeff said that the challenge was like watching bad performance art, and I agree. I think this could have been a 5-minute challenge in the episode, and I think it ran way longer than that, or at least it felt that way.
But I have the final tally here. Ozzy destroys the competition in this challenge by a truly insane margin. Going from the bottom up, Sandra and Becky both have about 20 pounds. Adam has 22 pounds. Yule in third place, 22 and a half pounds. He barely beats Adam. Parvati, 24 pounds. Good job, Parvati. Ozzy, 45 pounds. A full 21-pound margin of victory. Insane, especially because the edit of this long challenge does nothing to indicate that Ozzy's blowing it out of the water.
Yeah, it's not like the other challenges where it's clear that he's,
No.
100 yards ahead of everybody else.
You don't see until the end when Jeff goes and grabs the bucket. Jeff says something like, I'm going to use my intuition. I think this is the heaviest bucket. Ozzy's bucket is heaped over. It's full and then some. Everybody else has a half full bucket. Ozzy wins the challenge, so it'll be Ozzy, Yul, and Parvati on the reward. Adam, of course, is exiled. That's that. Do you want to go to the reward or go to the suffering?
I just want to say one thing regarding the result of this challenge. Adam fell half a pound short of Yule. And I think it's a little bit unfair. They should have used an electronic scale. In my opinion, Jeff was just using his janky
he's eyeballing it a little bit. Yeah.
And gave it to Yule. But I have a theory here, and you tell me what you think about this.
Mm-hmm.
If Yule gets 1 pound less, and the 3 people that go on reward are Ozzy, Parvati, and Adam, then the game potentially flips. I think Parvati would have a lot more success at getting Ozzy to join her side if she had Adam there, because then you have the classic high school popular crowd hanging out together. You have the jocks in Ozzy and Adam, and then you have the pretty girl cheerleader in Parvati that's willing to flirt with both of them to get her way. That half a pound could have made a huge difference in the grand scheme of things.
This is where I would have liked to get a few confessionals from Ozzy this week, because we really don't. We don't get a sense of where his head is at. And instead, the edit really plays up this, Adam and Parvati are really working Ozzy is their fracture point. They're really hoping to flip him. If we had heard from Ozzy himself and he'd said, no, I'm I too strong, right? We don't hear much. I think Ozzy's the only one, actually, that we don't hear an outlook from this week, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else says, here's my game. Here's who I'm closest with. Becky's like, it's me and Yule. Yule's like, it's me and Becky, right? Sundra's watching Ozzy. Adam and Parvati have their position pretty clear. We don't know what's going on in Ozzy's head. Is his mindset just win challenges and go home?
It might be.
It might be, but we don't know, which I think is a shame.
I just don't think Ozzy's thinking that far ahead strategically. He's just kind of operating based on vibes right now. It seems like he's comfortable working within the I2s. It's a group of people that, overcame a massive numbers disadvantage after the mutiny twist, so we probably feel some kind of connection there. It seems like the other I2 members clearly see Ozzy as number 4 in their group, and Ozzy's oblivious to that fact.
I don't know if it's that Ozzy is number 4. I think it's that they see Ozzy as the biggest threat, that Becky and Sundra are looking at a guy who's won 3 straight challenges out of this episode, at least.
Yeah, he's won 3 out of 4 individual immunities right now.
3 out of 4 individual immunities and a reward versus a guy with the immunity idol. And they're totally focused on the one who can just keep winning, right?
Which is weird too, because challenge wins aren't guaranteed. Like, Ozzy could lose a challenge at any point and you can vote him out, but Yule's idol is there every week. It's a locked safety net for him. So
has he had that since the 2nd episode?
Since episode 2. He's the second person sent to exile after Jonathan, and he still hasn't needed to use it yet. Let's talk about reward first, because the reward is ridiculous every step of the way, starting with the plane ride, where the contestants don't wash off before going on the plane. Why?
They don't wash off until they get in a shower at the resort. They are on the plane with saran wrap or something over the seats of the plane. They're covered in mud. Ozzy's written "I heart something" on his chest. Did you catch that?
Oh, I didn't catch that. No.
He's got like "I heart" on his pecs, and then he's got something on his abs, and you can't really see it.
What do you think he wrote? Fill in the blank for Ozzy. It's a little game of Mad Libs. My guess is fishing. Oh.
They get off the plane. I assume they take some sort of transportation from the airstrip to the resort. The resort is on Rarotonga, and I don't know what island the game is on, but it is a flight away. I've looked up the resort, by the way. So they're at Rumors on Itutonga. They walk up. They're given leis. They're still covered in mud. They walk into the resort. They're still covered in mud. Later, when they're at dinner in their suite, being fed by an in-house chef, there is mud all over the floor. Why did nobody say, let's hose these sad people off? It's ridiculous. It's nasty. It's
They
nasty.
wanted the scene of them going into the shower with all of the mud so it would all drip off of them. We get some creepy camera work as the producers are holding the camera up to the window of the shower as Ozzy's washing off. I had cleaned my apartment like a week before watching this episode, and watching the players walk through that resort with all of the mud dripping down, it skeeved me out. It made me want to go clean my kitchen again.
I think it's Ozzy says, I will never forget that shower for the rest of my life. Like, yeah, of course, because it was a 3-hour shower because you had to get all this crap off of you and down the drain. That drain is going to be nasty. So that's the first problem. This is made worse when you hear how nice this resort is. And to be honest, I don't have a great perspective on how nice resorts are. How much do you think a week at Rumors is now? I tried to pick a weekend and it said, nope, you got to do a week. So
I'm going to say $2,000 for a week, like $200-$300 a day.
I mean, not even remotely close, my guy. Not even remotely close.
What's the answer?
In New Zealand dollars, $12,705 for a week. In American dollars, that's $7,910.
Wow. Okay.
That's an $8,000 a week resort. And they walk in covered in mud.
Well, I guess you want to get your money's worth, right? If you're paying that much, you want to get every piece of dirt wiped off of you.
Yeah, I mean, they get massages, they get a tribal dance, they get in-house chef. The power goes out as they're eating dinner. Parvati and Ozzy at dinner kind of bond, right? We see some sparks a little bit. There's a lot of flirtiness. Worth noting, though, we only hear about it, right? We see it. See Parvati making comments, Ozzy like letting it happen, right? Reciprocating a little bit. We get some voiceover and some confessional from Parvati. Nothing from the other side. And so we don't know if this is working or not. We hear from Yul. Yul's frustrated by it. He doesn't like it. He's hoping that Ozzy isn't swayed. Yeah. I don't blame him because the power goes out. They decide to go skinny dipping in the hot tub with the cameras on them. The night vision cameras that are typically used to film rats and awkward post-tribal council interaction are now being used to film 3 naked people in a hot tub.
I want to know how they got from the dinner to the hot tub itself.
It's out the door.
No, I mean how Parvati convinced these guys to go skinny dipping with her. We have no build up to that component. We get a confessional from Parvati where she says that they all agreed to strip down and jump in the hot tub. But I want to know how we got from point A to point B. How did Parvati convince this group? Did she need to convince only Ozzy? And then Yul said, well, if Ozzy's going, I have to go. I think that's an important part of the story that we completely missed.
You know, that's a good point. Because if you're in Ozzy's shoes and Parvati looks at you and says, let's go skinny dipping, you're going, right? Like, that's totally in line, I think, with Ozzy's vibe and personality. I don't think Yul's ever skinny dipped in his life.
And it's so obvious the entire time where Parvati and Ozzy, they're having fun. They're young, they're hot. Parvati at this point is 23, Ozzy's 24. This segment is like 2006 CBS Productions dream. They got the 2 youngest, hottest people on the cast. But Yul is straight up miserable. He is sitting in the corner of the hot tub with his legs tightly together, almost in a ball. And I think he's there purely for strategic purposes. He's really just trying to block Ozzy from hooking up with Parvati, so that way the I2 alliance sticks together. There's literally a transition shot in the hot tub where Yul is face palming.
It's blatant, but I've said this twice now and I'll say it one more time. I wish we heard anything from Ozzy in confessional. And just to reiterate, Parvati literally pees in the hot tub while they're all in it. And if I'm Yul at that point, I'm out. I'm not sharing a hot tub with somebody who's just admitted they've peed in it.
Yul's going to do what he needs to do to get through the final 6, right? If it means sitting in a piss-filled hot tub, he's willing to do it.
That's outlasting. Yeah, interesting reward. So
I think it's the best reward of the season, at least the most memorable up until this point. The hot tub segment, I think, encapsulates Parvati's character for the season, where they present her as the flirty girl, and the biggest example of that is her skinny dipping in the hot tub. I think this is, and we'll talk about this later, we both know that Parvati comes back in a future season. That's not going to be a secret. And I wonder if she would have been invited back if not for the hot tub sequence. I think this did a lot for her in production's eyes.
I think it did a lot for her in a lot of people's eyes because, to be honest, I'm not seeing a ton of strategic gameplay from Parvati outside of her flirtation, and her flirtation does not work. We'll come back to this when she goes home. I don't get the Parvati hype.
Her flirtation doesn't work here, but she's also fighting an uphill battle. Up
Yeah.
until this point, she's succeeded with every guy that she wanted to lure over. She did it with Nate. She did it with Adam when Adam had another girl that he was interested in on the island. Parvati was like 2 for 2 going into this one. But once you put stoic Yule in the hot tub with Ozzy and Parvati, that's like a mood killer that she just couldn't overcome.
I mean, I don't really have anything, actually, about what's going on back at camp, except that they basically say Ozzy's a threat.
Becky saw the amount of mud piled up in Ozzy's bucket, and that was the alarm for her. Ozzy is capable of winning out and going to the end, where I think he would be a serious jury threat.
Yeah.
A lot of these Raro people on the jury don't seem like very strategically minded players, so they might favor someone like Ozzy, who walked in every week with the immunity necklace around him. There's a couple questions I want to ask you here. They talk about targeting Ozzy if he loses immunity. He later wins immunity, which we'll touch on in the challenge. But do you think that if Ozzy lost this week, he would have been going home over Parvati or Adam?
It's a really hard question. I think it's the hardest vote question of the season in a lot of ways because Ozzy has a lot of individual win equity, right? Yule, I think, says, I don't want to sit next to him at the end, but you really don't want to sit next to Parvati or Adam. You can make a case against Ozzy. There's no case you can make against Adam and Parvati. That's really hard. And I think there's a lot of counting you got to do and say, all right, how many challenges are left? How do I like my odds that it's an intellectual challenge? I mean, I guess an intellectual challenge is the only kind Ozzy can't win, right? He wins the endurance ones. He wins the physical strength ones. He wins the clever movement-based ones like the mud. Anything with swimming or balance, he's going to win, right? He's a massive challenge threat. And you kind of find yourself hoping, all right, give me a challenge with a map and Yule can win, right? Or Becky can win, or Sundra can win. I don't know. I think it would have been a much harder question. And I think it'll be, I mean, it's going to come back up next week, right? It'll be Adam or Ozzy. Yeah. And that's going to be the biggest question, I think, assuming Yule, Becky, or Sundra wins immunity. But I don't know. What do you think?
I'm leaning more and more towards targeting Ozzy the second he becomes vulnerable. Because the numbers with him right now are insane. He won 3 out of 4 individual and 5 out of 8 tribal. And one of the challenges that he lost was thrown intentionally to take out our sweet, sweet fan favorite, Bailey Garcia.
So it's really 5 out of 7.
It's really 5 out of 7 at that point. You cannot cast a vote against Ozzy for most of this season. So I think when that opportunity opens up, you need to take it. I think this episode would have been way more interesting too, had Ozzy lost individual immunity, and then the I2 players are forced to decide, do we want to take the Raros further, or do we want to knock out the Dolphin Boy now? But I'm good to go to immunity, if you are.
Well, one little thing between here and there. First, we have an animal shot. It's a black heron spearing a fish on the coastline. That, by the way, is the dark morph of a Pacific reef heron. More about that later. Don't you worry.
Oh, great. I look forward to it.
And then we have a moment where Parvati and Ozzy are in the shelter sleeping. And Yule is looking for Parvati and asks Sundra, says, where's Parvati? Sundra, quote, she's sleeping. She had a hard day getting her massage. And I feel like this is just a little bit of table setting for the subsequent conversations between Adam and Parvati and Ozzy in the shelter. The shelter has really become what's a comparison? It's really become the sanctuary for the white people. We've seen that for a while now, where basically these Raro kids are just in there all the time.
The Raro players welcomed everyone else to their beach at the merge, but the shelter is where they drew the line. They said, this is a spot just for us to hang out and cuddle and hook up.
It's their clubhouse, right? It's the pretty people clubhouse. But yeah, let's go to the challenge. This one is not so interesting. I'll say that right here at the top. The challenge itself is a pretty good challenge, but when Ozzy is present, it's not a competition. The challenge is to carry 4 puzzle pieces across a tiered balance beam, assemble those puzzle pieces into a ball balancing maze. Is there a better name for that?
Like a table maze?
A table maze. Ozzy dominates, right? I only have a couple notes here. Ozzy gets all of his puzzle pieces across. Yule one piece behind him. They are the only two who even get close to building anything. Yule's maze is not done being assembled when Ozzy finishes the challenge, right? And nobody else is building yet, I don't think. Adam and Sundra do not get a single piece across that we see. Adam falls over and over and over again. I will note, coming off of a day at exile, Ozzy has not fed Adam. And look what happened. When Ozzy's not providing, Adam can't win challenges.
I don't know about that. I feel like Adam's been pretty atrocious in the challenges all season. To me, this challenge felt like a lost opportunity for Yule. You mentioned this earlier, but if Ozzy's going to lose a challenge, it'll be one of the cerebral ones. A puzzle or a riddle or a memory challenge that we saw a couple weeks back when Adam won it. And Yule caught Ozzy on the table maze, and it came down to the puzzle piece, which in my mind is Yule's biggest strength in Survivor challenges. And even then, he couldn't catch him.
Yule makes an error in his puzzle assembly when Ozzy already has one ball in. Ozzy's lead was still substantial because he's so good at balancing. The fact that Yule even got close is impressive. My only other note, Becky takes a hard fall on the balance beam. She slips off and fully torso smacks into the balance beam. Well, the two contestants who are getting the worst edit of the season, right? They've made it to the finale and we don't know anything about them. The most we see of them is them taking these really hard falls. So just shout out to Becky because that looked like it really, really hurt. And she deserves some credit for that because she keeps going. She does not slow down even though she takes a hard hit.
Ozzy's your winner for the challenge. He's got 3 under his belt. The record for most individual immunity wins in a single season is 5. So going into the finale, Ozzy is potentially chasing greatness if he can hit that number or surpass it. Post-immunity, the big decision for the I2 players is who will they knock out? Yep. Adam, send him back to Ponderosa where he can cuddle up with Candace, maybe say hi to Jonathan, or Parvati, who had just stripped down on the spa reward.
Yeah.
Important to note that Yule actually promises both Adam and Parvati that he will keep them in the game.
Well, I'm not sure about that, though. Can I push back on that? We have these back-to-back conversations that Yule has. Adam, he's very explicit and says, look, if you want to stick around and give us Parvati, I'll do what I can to keep you around, right? He is crystal clear. With Parvati, it's a more generic, non-committal conversation. He talks enough in that conversation where I was like, is he giving away too much? But what it really comes down to is he says that while he sees Parvati as a bigger strategic threat, he sees Adam as a bigger challenge threat, and so he's not as worried about her. And he basically says that to her face. I don't know if he says flat out, give me Adam and I'll keep you in, right?
Yeah.
So,
but he still entertains the idea with Parvati. And if you were Yule here, who would you rather keep between those two?
I think given the concern of an Aussie flip, keeping Adam is the better move. I think if you have a Parvati-Aussie little alliance, that could be a problem pretty quick.
Even though Adam is the bigger, stronger guy, I feel like Parvati might be better in Survivor challenges. She seems like a more agile player. So there is the risk of Parvati flipping the game against the I2s. But going into the final, what's next week? The final 5, for Parvati to make that flip happen, she would need 2 people. So maybe she could get Ozzy. But that trio of Sundra, Becky, Yule seem so close that I'm assuming they will remain in control going into next week. Adam doesn't seem like a very strategically savvy person.
No, not at all.
For the last couple weeks, I think when his dad visited, I don't have his dad's name right here. I wish I had it for you, Jack, because I know you like the family content.
Huge dad guy over here.
But Adam tells his dad that, hey, Dad, I'm on the way out. I just got to win challenges at this point. Like, Adam has forfeited the strategic side of the game and recognized that he's just going to need to win out. So I think I might want to keep Parvati, even though she's a bigger strategic threat, just so that way you have another body in the game that can potentially take out Ozzy. Otherwise, Yule is saying, I'm going to beat Ozzy in a challenge. and put the team on my back, which, hey, could be good for his resume if he's able to pull it off and he can say that to the jury, but it can also go terribly wrong. Other highlight before Tribal Council is that discussion between the Raros and Ozzy in the shelter, where Adam and Parvati make their pitch. They say Ozzy's on the outside of the I2 Alliance. On top of it, Sandra isn't pulling her weight around camp. She doesn't fish like you, Ozzy. Do we really want to keep someone in the game that doesn't fish like you? And then Ozzy goes, wait, what, fishing? Maybe I will vote her out. If you're Ozzy here, do you stick with the I2s or do you flip to the Raros?
I mean, I'm a broken record. I want to hear anything from Ozzy talking to the camera right now. I have no idea where his priorities are in the larger scope of the game. And I almost wonder, the more I think about it, the longer we record, maybe he was so crystal clear in his confessionals, I am I2 all the way, I'm never going to work with these two, that there was not enough ambiguity in his confessionals for them to use it in this edit. Right?
I think that's a very realistic possibility. Because Ozzy loves the I2s. You remember when they won that challenge after the mutiny twist, and he said that
people who mutiny die first.
Yeah, like he's been so anti-Raro for weeks now. So I wouldn't be surprised if all of the footage lost on the cutting room floor is Ozzy saying, "I bleed I2. This is my this is my new family." But what would you do if you were in his shoes?
I mean, if I'm in his shoes, I'm feeling real comfortable in my seat. I'm sticking with I2 and I'm saying, let's get rid of Adam. I think if I'm Ozzy, I'm wanting to cut down physical threats. I'm not flipping because I don't have the numbers on Yule, and I'm going to rely on physical challenge performance and good vibes around camp to make it to the end.
I think I would consider flipping, but it would depend on the logistics of the idol. Where if you have a 3-3 tie, let's say you do 3 votes on Yule and then 3 votes on Parvati, what happens there? Does Yule's idol still get technically activated and flushed?
Right.
So at least that way he's vulnerable next round. If that idol gets automatically used on a tie, then I would go for it. But Ozzy isn't thinking that far ahead. He's thinking about the next meal at camp. I'll also throw out that we get some villainous Yule here. Yule describes himself as the Godfather in Confessional, and even though that's his general reputation, I felt like his gameplay never crossed that line into a villainous territory. Mm-hmm. But after that Adam and Parvati pitch to Ozzy, Yule stands up and he pulls Adam aside and scolds him for even attempting to flip the game, which is ridiculous to me. Yeah. Yule, more so than any other person here, respects the strategic game of Survivor. He knows that the Raro people are going to do whatever they can to stay in the game, yet he seems like personally offended by that attempt.
This is the weirdest Yule moment of the season, I felt like. It's unnecessary. It's continuing to burn a bridge that's already mostly ashes, right? You're not winning Adam's vote at the end, almost definitely. But why gamble it? Why close that door even harder? It was a weird move. That's all I have to say.
Do you want to go to Tribal Council?
Let's go to Tribal Council. Let's talk about the hat, Clyde.
Oh, the fedora.
Yule, before Tribal, says, do you think Jonathan would mind if I wear his hat? And then, do you think Jeff would get mad at me if I gave Jonathan his hat? Yule, as he's walking into Tribal, sets Jonathan's hat down on the jury seating for Jonathan to retrieve. Jeff calls this possibly the boldest move yet and characterizes this as trying to buy a vote. Yule frames it, for the most part, as just a nice gesture. Jonathan asked for his hat back when he walked out. Yule remembered. Where do you see this? Is this Yule trying to buy a vote? Is it just a nice gesture? And a deeper question, is there such thing as a purely kind act on Survivor?
This could have been a purely kind act because Yule doesn't attempt to take credit for it. He puts the hat on the jury bench before the jury walks out. So I think Yule's original plan was that the jury members will arrive, Jonathan will see that his hat is back, and Yule won't receive any heat for it because there's no knowing who dropped the hat there. Right. Jeff is the one that kind of blows up Yule's spot as he goes, hey, Jonathan, Yule is the one that brought you the hat. Like, yes, Yule walked in with it, but he still ran the idea by the other players. So at the end of the day, yes, Yule was probably pandering to Jonathan to a degree, but he didn't attempt to make this flashy move at tribal council. And to be fair, you tell me what you think about this. If Yule sits at the end, no matter who he's against, I think he gets Jonathan's jury vote either way. It doesn't matter if he returned the hat or not. I feel like Jonathan was closer to Yule than any other player out there.
And even though they didn't always get perfectly along, they're the two game bots, right? They respect a well-played game. And I think that's, depending on who sat at the end, right? Jonathan would incorporate some spite into his decision. But I think in this situation, Yule got his vote.
What did you make of it? Did you think it was Yule pandering to the jury?
I mean, I didn't like that people blew up his spot, right? Like, if Jeff hadn't said anything, would somebody else have blown it up? Yule could have said, look, I suggested we bring Jonathan's hat back, and nobody else jumped on it, so I figured I'd carry it for him, right? Because he does it quietly, I don't think he had any deeper intention. But flip side, he could have played it close to the chest this week, not said anything. Jonathan just goes, oh, thank you guys for my hat. And next week, Yule could have gone, I brought you your hat, Jonathan. I'm a nice guy.
Now you have to vote for me.
That's not vote-winning behavior. That's not final speech behavior.
I'm good to go to this vote if you are.
Yep.
Your final vote is 4 on Parvati, 2 on Sundra. Adam and Parvati are left out of the plan. And Parvati goes home. She joins the jury. Were you sad to see Parvati out of the game?
Well, yeah, she was my winner pick.
And you mentioned earlier that you didn't understand the hype with Parvati. Like, what's your take with that?
Let me just say this before we get into Parvati so I don't forget it. Both Adam and Parvati vote for Sundra. Unless that is a purely symbolic vote, it gives me the sense that they were at least somewhat confident that Ozzy would vote with them. Because otherwise they might have flipped on each other. Or one of them might have flipped, right? It could have been 1 on Sundra, 5 on Parvati, if Adam had decided to flip. So that's either a bad strategic read by them or great strategic play by Ozzy. So I do want to throw that.
Or it's a great strategic move by Parvati that she was able to keep Adam loyal to her until the very end.
Yeah, that's true too. But I think for Parvati, right, for her name to be so recognizable in the community, I'm hoping she wins her second appearance on the show. Because this one, yes, she plays a pretty good social game. It's not a game that deserves the history books. It's a great performance for Cook Islands, but the fact that her name has superseded the show, like, she is better known than the season, right? I think that's a fair claim. And the fact that that is true tells me she must either win or just have an insanely brilliant performance in her returning season, because this was not worth the hype. I mean, is it camera friendly because she's pretty and she's flirty? Yes. But I don't know. That doesn't seem like enough for her to earn a bigger name than, like, Carolyn, right? For all of her weirdness in 44. I'm so proud of myself for getting that, right? Carolyn does make it to the end, right? She does make it to the final tribal council. I guess time will tell. But at this point, I see why she will return. I don't see why she's, like, people's favorite player.
I think Parvati was innovative in the fact that she was one of those flirty archetypes that didn't stick by the same person all season. You have flirty people in the past that kind of found their partner, entered a showman's, and then rode with them very far. But Parvati wasn't afraid to kind of play the field a little bit and see what her options were. I can give you my epitaph and then my spiel on Parvati, because I'm very high on her Cook Islands game.
Okay.
I have R.I.P. Parvati, the expert of flirtation and narration.
I like that.
As far as the Cook Islands edit is concerned, like, Parvati has 2 roles. She flirts with the guys, and she narrates various events like her finger injury. Mm-hmm. But in reality, if you take a look at Parvati's game, I think she was screwed over by both the edit and the twist of this season more so than anybody else on the island. If you cut out that bottle twist and Rero enters the merge with the numbers advantage, they'd be up 6-4. At that point, Jonathan has no incentive to flip because the best you can do is force a tie. And if that Rero group stays in control, there was a core 3-person alliance, well, really a core 4-person alliance of Parvati, Nate, Adam, and Candace, where Parvati's the glue. She's the one connected to Nate, and she's connected to Adam and Candace as the showmans. I think if you cut that twist out of the game, Parvati potentially goes on to win this season, and people really don't talk about that enough. I think this is a perfect example of someone getting screwed over by circumstances outside their own control. And if Parvati made it to the Final Four with that group, I think she was more well respected than Adam. People liked her way more than Candace. Candace was despised. Nate, I think she would have a little bit of difficulty with in a jury vote, especially just with the image of having, 3 white people with Nate in the Final Four. But with all that aside, I think Parvati comes back in another season, and this is her most underappreciated performance in her Survivor career, and she still places 6th. This is not a dud of a performance.
No, I don't think it's a dud. I just think to be a single name recognizable player, like even Russell is not Russell, he's Russell Hantz, and that's an iconic performance to the end.
Yeah,
right
in his first appearance. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to diminish her game in this season because she does play a solid game. I think I don't do a end of season ranking like you do, but she would rank pretty highly for me, to be honest. She would rank top 3 for me.
I'm making the list right now. She's fringe top 3.
I mean, my top 3 are Yul, Ozzy, Parvati. I just will like to see what she continues to do in this game going forward to earn her place in history.
And she does return on Survivor. Her next appearance is season 16, Survivor Micronesia. In that season, we now have 4 people, and those 4 are Amanda, James, Parvati, and Penner. So we're building up that returning player cast.
Sweet.
You want to head to winners and losers?
Let's do it. Who's your loser?
We can get through these a bit quicker. That way we can talk about some final tribal combinations for the finale.
And then I have a long honorable mention here, Clyde. I'll say that.
A long honorable mention and a winner pick to replace Parvati. So
Who's
quick
your loser
goes to Adam. Lost Parvati as an ally. Clearly positioned on the bottom going into the final 5. He doesn't win individual immunity. He's likely going home next.
My loser is Yul.
Really? Okay.
The idol is still in play, and Yul is a massive threat. And frankly, the fact that Becky and Sundra are still willing to be ride or die with him, I mean, they're in a tough spot.
Wait, and that makes him the loser?
No. So the reason I think Yul is the loser is because there's a lot of things working against him, and the number of distractions continues to drop. There's a big argument to target Yul as soon as possible, and it's the thing in his pocket, the compass. For that reason, and frankly, the fact that he's leaning more and more into the mob boss thing, I think that could bite him in the ass when it's final 5.
I gave the winner of the week to Yul.
Okay, so I give my winner to Adam.
What? Okay, so my spiel on Yul, I think he still has a clear shield in front of him in Ozzy. The idol is valid through and including the final 4. So if anyone wants to take a shot at him now, good luck. It's just going to bounce off of you, and then he'll be vulnerable just 1 round earlier. I think we're kind of at the point in the season where you're almost better off just waiting to target Yul as opposed to dealing with the logistics of the idol. He's seen as the puppet master. Adam calls him that in confessional. And I just feel really good about his chances moving forward. I think he would have some difficulty against Adam or Ozzy in a jury vote, but it seems like Sundra and Becky are both fully willing to go deep in the game with him.
I think that's very fair. I think the reason I don't have that perspective is because maybe the next time on is getting to me a little bit and I'm a little too paranoid, but I can see a world where next episode, and this is the reason Adam is my winner, he converts enough people from I2 to flip, to target Yul, to target Ozzy, right? If he can talk to the ladies, plead his case, there's a chance. And I think just the fact that Ozzy is such an astronomical threat and Yul has the idol, and if Adam can just make it a little farther, he's got so many jury votes locked.
Yeah.
Right?
Would you feel satisfied with an Adam win? I feel like we've talked about this before. Just narratively, which remaining players winning would have a satisfying ending to the season?
Oh, Ozzy or Yul would be satisfying, right? Becky and Sundra, I'm sorry, have not had enough screen time for me to feel really to root for them, right? Adam, if he wins, Is it a legit win? Yeah. Is it a satisfying or exciting win? No, not at all. It's just going to come down to tribal lines, and that's not what you want to see in a $1 million decision.
Still an interesting winner. Maybe behind Natalie White, the winner
I
of
wouldn't
Samoa.
say that. I wouldn't say that. I would
She
not
still
say
has that spot locked in your list. Quick dishonorable mention to the spa custodian staff. Probably a rough day for them, and it was probably difficult watching all of the I2 players roll up to the spa covered in mud, knowing all the work ahead of you for the day.
Oh, that would be so angry. Like, I would be so pissed if I was that custodian or whatever. My honorable mention goes to where to begin with this. So, this animal shot this week, the Pacific Reef heron, was really easy to figure out. There's not a lot of herons in Oceania. Agreta sacra is the Latin name for the Pacific Reef heron. Interestingly, the lines between egrets and herons, that's a very, very blurry line. And it turns out, actually, egret and heron have a shared root word. They both come from French, from the French for heron, which is aigron. And egret is aigrette. So they literally have a shared root word. And then the delineation between the two types of bird, heron and egret, is very, very fuzzy. But here's the other interesting part. Some of these animals, you look at them up, and there's not a lot of history that's been digitized about their discovery or categorization or cataloging. The Pacific Reef heron, however, formally described in 1789 by Johann Friedrich Gmelin, who, interestingly, is known as a malacologist, which I'd never heard of. Malacology is the study of mollusks. Kind of fun. But he based his description of the bird on a description by Joseph Banks. Joseph Banks was on Captain Cook's first voyage, Cook Islands, right?
Oh.
So now we're full circle. Joseph Banks helped make Kew Gardens in London the leading botanical garden in the world back in the 1800s. I'm sorry, 1700s. All of that parallel to the bird is actually cataloged under a genus that was introduced in the 1800s. This was all happening in the 1700s. In the 1800s, the bird was moved to go underneath the genus Agreta by a guy named Johann Reinhold Forster. So we've got two Johanns, a John, and a Joseph involved in this. I just thought that was interesting. Johann Forster went on Cook's second voyage.
Oh.
So kind of wild. A lot of J names. Two guys involved with Captain Cook's voyaging. And shout out to the Pacific Reef heron. That's my honorable mention.
Wait, so the honorable went to the bird, or it went to one of the people involved in the story?
The honorable mention goes to the shared root word aigron, I guess, because that's the most interesting little tidbit. But It's a fun Wikipedia page. And the bird is known in Fiji as bellow.
Ooh, a nice callback to 45. What are the odds of that?
Yet another callback. So, all right, let's talk about these permutations for next week.
Yeah, so we got 10 total permutations. We're at the point in Survivor history where the established Final Tribal Council format is a Final Two. So these are all Final Twos that we're looking at.
I don't like the Final Two. We can get into Final Two versus Final Three next week, but I don't like it.
Which combinations did you find the most interesting? Because some of them, I feel like, pretty obvious who would win. If you get a Yule versus a Suntra, Yule would destroy in the jury vote. If you get a Becky versus an Ozzy wins. But what are some of your favorites?
So let's make a generalization here that I feel bad making, but we just have to make it based on the edit of this season and their performance in the season. Becky and Sundra have no chance of winning this game.
They could win if they sit next to each other in the end.
Right, which is not going to happen, but this is... So, based on gameplay, I don't think they're going to win. Based on edit, I don't think they're making the final, right? Or one of them makes the final, and it's the shortest Final Tribal Council in history. Because they just don't have any equity in the edit of the show, and that sucks, and I feel bad, but we can take them out of contention. What that leaves us with, in the permutations here of the Final Tribal, is just the gentleman. Ozzy versus Adam, Ozzy versus Yule, Adam versus Yule. Those three are the interesting ones. So, yeah, where do you want to start with those three?
Let's talk about some of the Adam ones. If you look at the Yul versus Adam, it actually ends up being closer than I thought it would.
There's a lot of votes that come in right at the end in Yul's favor. Did you say Yul Adam or Ozzy Adam?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yul Adam, because Adam would get a lot of the loyal Raro people. He would get the Rebeccas, the Jennys, Nate, Candace, Parvati. So with
That's
that,
5.
Adam's already at 5. He needs just one more. Meanwhile, Yul has his locked votes. He's got the Jonathans, the Sundra, the Becky. And then you're left with the two outsiders. I don't know if Ozzy's a lock for Yul on the jury.
I think Ozzy's a lock for Yul at this point. Ozzy is a lock where we sit right now. Depending on how he goes out, things could change, right?
That's fair.
But at this stage, Ozzy's a team player, right? He's still fishing for everybody. He's stuck with I2 all the way through, right? He's proud of how far they've come. He's not voting for Adam.
So at that point, you have 5 Adam, 4 Yul, and Brad as the final jury vote of the season. And Brad could go either way. Who knows with Brad? I think that guy had 6 confessionals all season.
He's got the original tribe connection to Yul. He spent more time with Adam, I think. It's coin toss.
If you had to pick, where does Brad go there?
Let's just say that Brad goes Yul. Because I think
it's a
Brad,
5-5.
And here's what I'm going to justify that on. The one moment we have of Brad that sticks out at all is Brad saying it's an individual game after the merge. And that drama. Adam's relying on his old tribal connections. Yul has reached across the aisle. He worked with Jonathan. He's worked with other people, right? Yes, he had that core alliance, but he was willing to go beyond it. Adam really wasn't. Maybe that's enough for Brad to flip, and it's a 50-50.
Another interesting one that you hit on was Adam versus Ozzy. So what are the locked votes there? You get the 3 I2s all going Ozzy. Would you vote for Ozzy?
Yes.
Over Adam?
I think no matter how it comes about at the end, the I2 people are going to stick with the I2 people, I think.
Okay.
I feel pretty confident making that claim.
So Ozzy would get those 3 locked. Adam gets his locked Raro people of Rebecca, Jenny, Nate, Candace, Parvati. And your last 2 votes are Jonathan and once again Brad. Jonathan, I have no clue because it seems like he hated Adam on a personal level. Adam antagonized him.
Jonathan's
the
never
entire
going to
time.
vote Adam. I think we can make that claim. Jonathan's never going to vote Adam. Adam called him a cancer, right? You're not going to vote for somebody who calls you a cancer.
Okay. But at the same time, like Ozzy kind of represents what Jonathan does not value in the game of Survivor. Like Jonathan really cares about the strategic side. He did fish a little bit, so maybe that could pull
they're
Jonathan
fishing
over.
bros, and it's the guy who called you a cancer versus a guy who didn't play a game like you played. Come on, Clyde.
And then similar situation there. Brad is your clutch vote. He could either tie it up by voting Ozzy or give Adam the win. It could go either way.
So are those the same count? Is it 4?
It's
is it
5-5.
5-4?
Yeah, 5-4 with Brad.
Depending on Brad.
The most interesting one, though, in my opinion, is Yul versus Ozzy. A battle of the brains and the bronze. How do you see this playing out?
I see Becky going for Yul for sure. I see Nate going Ozzy.
Yeah, they had that connection at the merge where they were both drunk and strategizing on the beach.
I think Candace goes Yul based on Ozzy's outburst. Ozzy yelled directly at her after she mutinied.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think Candace goes Yul. Are you keeping track of these?
Yeah.
Or should I be writing
it's 2-1.
Adam, I think, goes Ozzy. I think Adam goes Ozzy. Again, contingent on how the vote goes. That sends Adam home. But Adam would go Ozzy based on meat boyness, right?
I think that's fair.
And he and Yul butted heads.
Because Adam straight up said that his only path to the end is just winning challenges. And if Ozzy sits in the final tribal, that means he accomplished the goal that Adam was unable to see through. So right now it's 3 Yul. Sundra is really tough.
Yeah.
Because there's points where in the early game on I2, Ozzy and Sundra were on the outside of the core alliance, and the two of them had to kind of weasel their way into the group there. So they have that longer lasting connection. And at this point in the season, it seems like Sundra is closer to Becky and Yul, and she's kind of drifted away from Ozzy. So she could go either way. What do you think, though?
Well, and I think she's closer, but I think that's closer on a strategic level. I don't know if it's closer on a personal or voting level. she clearly respects Ozzy's game, right? She talks him up. She's like, man, he can play. That's a tough one. That might be up in the air. Parvati, I think, goes Ozzy.
Okay, so now it's 3-3. And then you get the three mystery people of Brad, Rebecca, Jenny. Any inclination there on where they go?
None. I have no idea what they value. I don't even know who these people are. I've seen more of Brad, Rebecca, and Jenny from them walking into tribal councils. Not final, but I've seen more of them walking into the jury seats than I did in the game. So I have no idea what they would.
So that one's up in the air. I think that's one of the most interesting combinations on the board, though. The fact that you could get the mob boss strategist and the challenge beast sitting against each other at the end.
So in that, I would pick Yule, right? I've liked Yule's game more. He's played really well. He's obviously had the idol to help, but he's such a level guy that while I love the game Ozzy has played, I don't think we've seen enough of Ozzy, right? Do you have confessional counts at hand?
I can pull them up.
Because I'd love to know Ozzy's confessional count, because it's definitely low.
I think when I checked last week, it was pretty high. Because I looked at it for Jonathan, because he was the narrator of the season.
Right.
But I think Ozzy had the second or third most confessionals out of anybody on the cast. Because you got to keep in mind,
he had a lot early.
He has a lot early, and Ozzy talks a lot in confessional. It's just not about the game of Survivor. It's about the latest catch out on the sea. And
so all of that to say, because I know more where Yule sits strategically, I am more inclined to like him in the game.
So Yule is officially entering your winners pick club, along with the elite company of Sean from 45, Helen from 44, Mick Trimming from Samoa, if you remember Mick back in the day.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Who are some of the other ones that we had?
Parvati
was a good one. On this season.
I'm pretty happy with Parvati. That was a good run.
On China, I think you had Amanda. You had Frosty early, and then when he went home, you went to Amanda. So
yeah,
that'll also be interesting. Whenever we watch Micronesia down the line, you'll get two former Jack winner picks in Amanda and Parvati on the same cast.
Yeah. So I have to go with Yule, right? He's been my winner pick for like half of this season. I have to go with Yule for my winner pick for the season. I would be fine with an Aussie win, and I would love a Yule win looking ahead to next week. It's a 2-hour episode. We'll watch it in the next couple days, right? We're recording 2 episodes this week. And so I will know who wins in the next 48 hours. I'd be happy with either of them winning. I wish I would be happy with a Becky win, because I like Becky, and we just don't get enough of her.
Hey, don't sleep on Becky. All I'm saying is that if Becky makes it to the end and Yule is not alongside
she's an attorney.
She's an attorney.
She can make an argument.
She can make an argument to the jury, and she would have her closest ally, someone that is very well respected amidst the cast, sitting on the jury and actively campaigning for her. I think the worst case scenario for Becky is sitting next to Yule, where Yule takes all the credit for the moves that they made together. But I don't get the sense that Yule is a bitter person that would go to the jury and trash Becky's reputation.
Yule is the guy who says, I'm going to bring a hat and then not take credit for it. Yule would still work with Becky to the end and vote for her at the end.
So I wouldn't count Becky out. Sundra, I can understand counting Sundra out at this point, but we will find out next week. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We are approaching the end of the season. It's crazy. After next week, we'll have our, 6th season in the books?
Yeah, that's crazy. We're almost done with this season, and we're almost back into the live season, which is exciting as well.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to see some more modern gameplay. It can be a bit of a drag at points when the votes boil down to who's contributing around camp, even this late in the game. But you'll catch us then.